Kirk Boone. I'm here at Village Works NYC. I'm doing an interview with Mark Seager on his book, Tribe, Cycle Messenger Culture. And this is Mark right here. So,
Hey, Mark.
so how you doing, Mark?
I'm good.
All right. So, tell us a little bit about yourself, and was you ever a bicycle messenger?
No. That's the first answer. I was never a bike messenger. I like bikes. So that's why I kind of... I can basically tell you like how I got into doing this book. I was commissioned by Geo magazine, which is a German magazine, back in 2005 to photograph some cycle courier girls, specifically women in London. And a friend of mine, a photographer friend of mine, introduced me to some people because she knew them, and I did some pictures, and it was really cool, and I kind of interviewed them as well for the writing. And I was really, I was intrigued by their style and like what they were all about. And I always thought, oh, you know, this would be a really nice project. But I was doing other work, and it kind of like got put on the back burner for like nearly 10 years. Nearly 10 years. And I went back through the images, and I looked at them, and I just thought, I want to kind of like resurrect this idea and like work on something. So I contacted my friend in London, and we met and introduced to some people. The thing is with the bike messenger like community, it's very ephemeral. It's like there are people that come and go, but there are people that are always going to be there. You know, like the hardcore. This is my life. This is what I do. So they were like kind of like the basis of introducing me to other people. So I got introduced to some people in London, and I decided, I would photograph them. Originally, I photographed them, the courier girls against. I set up a white backdrop on the street in Soho in London, and I shot them against a white backdrop. So they were nice, clean, white portraits. But in between that, I shot some other stuff that I shot against a black backdrop, which I really, really liked, and I just thought it would work a little bit better. So I started photographing the portraits of bike messengers in London, and I just thought there's more to them than the people. The bikes are really important as well, because it's their machine, it's their workhorse. So I set up a backdrop, a larger backdrop, and I was hanging the bikes with a bungee strap against the backdrop, and I was like photographing the bikes. And then I was like, okay, so put your bags up, put everything that's like important to your work. So I was photographing this. So it was a very stylistic way of like photographing, which is what I'm used to. Like it was a very stylized idea. And then a friend of mine said, oh, you know, like you should go to New York because it's like the hotbed of like the bike messenger community. This is like where it kind of really started.
So let's go back to the year. What year did the magazine commission you?
2005.
2005.
Yeah.
So fast forward 10 years later, you started.
9 years.
9 years. Okay.
So there was that massive gap of 9 years where I didn't work on anything associated with the bike messenger community.
Okay, so you mentioned a little bit about you saw the messenger. Did you see was a global culture over time, or is like as you talk to them, you got to learn more and more?
Yeah, exactly. I didn't know there was a global culture of like bike messenger community. I was just commissioned to photograph these girls in London, and I just thought, oh, they were really cool. They were really cool, and we became like pretty good friends. And then and I was like, I shot the pictures, supplied the magazine, and they really liked them, and it was published, and I got the magazine, and I gave a few of the magazines to the and I was doing other work, and I was traveling to other places, and I was working, and so it kind of like, yeah, I just not forgot about it, but it was just, when you're working, you just like, move on, next job, like you kind of move on to something new.
So, 10 years after 2015 or so.
Well, actually, not 10 years, probably about 8 years. So it was about late 2013 was when the same person who introduced me to the Messenger Girls way back in 2005. I contacted her and she said, "Oh," I said, like, I'm interested in like meeting up again and like, just sort of hang out and just see what's what.
But was there a book impetus, or you were just one?
No, there was no concept of a book.
Okay,
it was about like, like as a photographer, like if you sometimes, if you're commissioned to make photographs, you kind of like, you have an idea. It's like, well, you don't have an idea, but like sometimes you go and meet people, and it's like, and it's very structured, and it's like people coming to the studio or whatever. This was more about the street, so I had to go and meet people and like just trying to befriend people. Because I'm not going to go up to people and just say, "Oh, I want to take your picture." I don't work like that.
Okay.
I don't work like that. I just want to like build a rapport and get to understand what people are about. Because people are like, especially if you're doing portraits, people are going to be more amiable and like friendly, and you're going to see it in the images if they're comfortable. If you go into a situation where you just like go, right, okay, I want to take your picture, people are going to be a little bit like rigid and like a little bit like, they're not going to be relaxed. So I wanted to break down some barriers before I started making pictures. Sure. So that was just like, like hanging out with people and like, getting to know people. So
when did you start seeing that it was a culture more than just them making deliveries in London? When did you start to see?
Pretty much straight away. Like,
you saw it was a lifestyle.
Yeah, they said like, "Oh, you should come over to this place on a Friday in London." And I went there, and there was like 100 like bike messages hanging out, drinking beer, and like doing what they do after they finish work. And it was like a bike shop, and I was like, "Oh shit, this is pretty cool."
Oh, okay, cool.
And so then I was like, okay. And so I would go there every Friday. I would like meet people, like get like people like interested. And I'm like, yeah, like, and I would like explain to them like I did these pictures before, and they were like, oh, and I would show them the pictures, and they were like, oh my god, what happened to her? We haven't seen her for like 10 years. It's like, yeah, because I shot these like 8 years ago or whatever. It's like, oh, now she's married, she's not even a career anymore. And then like there were people that coming through and like saying like, oh my god. So I built up a rapport in that way. But then as soon as I realised that I kind of like captured people's attention of like wanting to photograph them. Like I kind of said like, I'm interested in photographing, do more photographs. Mm-hmm. That was it. I was on it. So then I was just like, okay. And then I did these pictures against a black backdrop. So I just thought, right, okay, I'm going to come and do a black backdrop. And I did some preliminary pictures where I shot them, and I liked them straight away.
So, okay, so you liked them. Okay, all right.
I didn't really care whether they liked them or not, because I didn't show them.
Oh, okay.
I liked them.
You
so
liked them.
as a photographer, like you've got to like your own work before anyone else.
So when I met you, and I can't remember the year, you was working on this. You was working on this book. Yeah. So what I want to get at, when did this, the energy? Because I saw so much energy that you put into making this book happen. That I said you must love the culture. Or you really want to tell this story in some sort of way. So when did that impetus kind of come?
Pretty much straight away. Like as soon as I did like some photographs in London and I liked the images, I just thought this is a good project. And then someone said to me, Mark, like, have you considered like going to New York? Like this is like the traditional like home of like where bike messenger culture. And the thing is like you call them bike messengers here. Like in Europe, they're called couriers. Okay. Everywhere you go, like Berlin, Paris, London, they're called courier. It's only in America where you can buy messages. I don't know why. Don't get me on like American words and stuff. Aluminium, aluminum, whatever. You know, but so that's what you call them. So you know, and so the idea was, you know, don't say anything back there.
I didn't know. Everybody knows bike messages, but they don't do that in Europe. Couriers.
So yeah, and I just thought this would be a really good project.
So as you left the women and you went to the men, because the women are almost a subset of the whole courier world. It's not a lot of them. So what was your experience?
Interesting you say that, because on a Friday night in London, it was mostly like guys. So out of 100 people, because you know there would be a bike shop and it would be on the street, and come rain or shine, there would always be people there. But if the weather was good, you'd have like 100 people. But out of 100, I would probably say like 70% were guys, and you'd have the rest as girls. But yeah, I didn't like differentiate between like the women and the men. I just saw them as a whole.
Okay.
So I didn't like think, right, okay, like, oh, you're a woman, like you're doing this is pretty tough riding a bike every day on the street.
For sure.
Because as soon as I realised what they were doing, I was like, oh, man, that's hard work. Being on the bike every day, you know, like in any weather is pretty. But anyway, so yeah, and so my friend like introduced me to a guy in New York, and I messaged him. He said like, yeah,
come to New York.
Come to New York. Come and stay with me, and like, you know, I'll introduce you to people in New York. So I came here originally to New York in October 2013, and it was just after Bike Curl and the Halloween Alley Cat. So it was a pretty fucking crazy time. There was a lot going on. So, but I got to meet a lot of people. And yeah, I just thought, right, okay, I've got these images that I shot in London. I'm just gonna like stay with the same theme. So I like set up a backdrop. But you know, it's New York, you know, like, and I was trying to like the first trip. I was hoping to get everyone at the same time, but look at it tonight, man. It's like people are like flaky, you know. It's like New York City, you know. They were like, totally I thought, oh, you know, like I was going to get like hundreds of people, but like 20 people came through. But the people that came through originally on that first shoot were people that were like the hardcore bike messages in New York City.
Now this wasn't. I think I met you at the Tompkins Square Park shoot when you put up. Yeah. You set up a photo.
Yeah, that was probably a year later.
A year later, okay.
That was a year after.
All right, so let me get into the structure of the book, because I'm looking through it. And I like to read like text with my photos. I kind of like to get little stories, but here I didn't find a lot of text except for the quotes that you gave, which was pretty awesome. But as you put this book together, and you talked about those stories in London, why didn't you take a few of those stories and include it with the London photograph to kind of get the courier speaking for themselves? Because I know what it is, but that person outside the courier world may not understand exactly what's in the mind of these couriers. So is there a reason why you just want to show the photograph and not too many stories?
Okay, originally, like I said, I had an idea of like doing it in a very stylistic way, where I would like make portraits and I would have pictures of bikes, and it was purely about style. So I wanted to show people portraits and combine that with pictures of bikes and the things that they were wearing. So I was very into like the style of like, and I really liked the way that they dressed, and you know, like they're very adaptable the way that they dressed. So I was interested in that. And the reason that it kind of like morphed into like more of like a broad spectrum book is because I sent it to a publisher, and they said, we like the idea of it being very stylized, but for us to make it work as a book, we want to see more street. So I took that as
You did
verbatim.
the heart, and
I took it as verbatim, and I was like, oh, okay, you want to see more street? So I went on, and then what I did was, you know, and like I said, you know, like the core reason why I did the book was because I like bikes. So I always loved bikes since I was a kid. So like the bikes and the people, it was a nice combination. And the great thing about the book for me was that it reignited my love of bikes.
Okay.
So it meant I was like, right, okay. So I was like checking out their bikes. So I was like, okay, shit, I've only got a mountain bike. It's not going to work. So like checking out, I was like, oh, what kind of bike is that? So like when I got a bike, you know, like, and I started riding fixed gear. So it's like it wasn't just about me photographing them. It was like a really personal journey of like really like invigorating my joy of bikes.
Because I'm looking at the photos of the bikes in the street scenes as well. So me being a courier for 24 years, I have an idea of what kind of bikes these guys ride, right?
Yeah.
So they're mountain bikes, they're six, there's road. And each of these guys got a style of riding of their own, even the cargo guys, right? So it would have been good to kind of break down the storytelling of the bike. Because I understand they're using the bike, but there's a lot of different elements of that bike. The frames, there's a lot. You shot a lot of frames.
Well, it didn't.
Right?
It's true because it didn't occur to me until like halfway through making the book that, you know what, it wouldn't matter what bike I was riding if I was riding around with them, as long as I could keep up with them. That was the key thing.
All right.
You know,
Okay.
I had a bike that enabled me to ride with them, so I was able to make the pictures. And that was it.
So you didn't really look at what kind of bikes they were
No,
riding?
I mean, I just thought, right, okay, well, you know, like, a mountain bike's not going to cut it, you know, like, I need to have something that's going to be, like, reasonably quick. So I was asking people, it's like, okay, what kind of bikes? It's like, and then I got introduced to fixed gear, and they were like, oh, when you have a go? This is in London. Like, when you have a go? And I had a BMX when I was a kid, and it was fixed gear, and it was like, I got on it, and it's like, I don't know if anyone's ever, like, the first time you get on a fixed gear, it's just like, oh, what is going on? Because, you know, it's like, wow, it's weird. It's weird. No, it's not just, it's just like that forward pedaling motion.
Okay.
But once you get it, you're kind of hooked. And I just thought, right, okay, this is what I want to ride. And so I got used to riding that type of bike, and I just thought, okay. And then the next stage is when the publisher came back to me and said, like, I want to see more street, I want to see more, it needs more. I don't know what that meant until after. They still wanted more, but anyway, it's just like, right, okay, well, I'll give you more. So I was like, okay, I said to these guys in London, okay, can I just follow you around for a day? So, yeah, well, if you can keep up with me. You know what my message is like, well, I'm like, well, you're a rookie. I kept up with them. And what happened, like, I earned their respect pretty much straight away because I was riding with them, but I was also riding and taking the photographs.
So you actually taking, and what kind of cameras? Did you have a mounted camera on the bike?
I did. Originally, I was shooting it on an iPhone.
Okay.
And I had it on a mount. And I realised that I tried to technical shit, but anyway, I was trying to like rig up something where I could like take a a picture from my handlebars and like press it, and it would make a picture. And I realised it's not working. And it was, and it's also, it's very rigid in the way that you see things. So it's always going to be the same thing. So I just realised I'm just going to hold the camera. So I would ride and like make sure I didn't get knocked off my bike and take the picture and then like.
And you were fixed.
And I was riding fixed, yeah. So I was like one-handed, like taking pictures.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. So I learned how to ride a bike, like a fixed gear bike, pretty quickly.
Yeah.
You know?
I bet. So let's get into these chapters because you go to 4 cities.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about the opening chapter, which is New York, and what was your experience like photographing bike couriers in New York? And
I put New York first in the book because
it doesn't
for
matter to me,
like,
but
yeah, no, I know, but
yeah.
I put New York first because for me it was it was the craziest place to make pictures on the street. Pure and simple.
So it wasn't like London. The streets weren't like London at all.
They're very similar, but anyone who rides a bike here knows that there's a lot of drivers in this city who don't give a shit. So like you got to be really like on it. So I just chose New York because I just thought out of all the 4 cities, New York was probably the hardest like to photograph. There were pictures that I thought that I had, but I didn't because I had to move my camera real quick because I had to grab my bars. Because otherwise, it's like no picture's worth getting knocked off the bike.
Okay.
So simply that was what it was, and that's how crazy it was. So that's
Here
why
in New York. Okay. So, what's the difference between a bike courier in New York and a bike courier in Berlin? Are there any differences? It may be the same, but you kind of
not much difference. In like everyone every city has its little quirky, but in terms of like people, that's the thing. Is when I started photographing different cities, I realised there wasn't really much difference between people.
You can see that in the photos too, right?
Yeah, like in the portraits, like I could have mixed it up and put like Berlin pictures in New York and just like tricked you everyone. And I said like, well, do you know where that's from? Unless you knew them, they're not that different.
That's right. That's right.
But if you look at New York, like you see like there's a lot of Hispanic, there's a lot of
African
Americans. There is that in London as well, but not as much. And in Berlin, definitely not as much.
Okay.
And in Tokyo, not at all. So like.
But there's no black, white, there's nobody in Tokyo. Just Japanese. So that's easy. Yeah. No, that's good. So before we go to London, I'm gonna read this quote because you punctuated the book with quotes, and so I kind of like that a little bit. So, and then you could talk about London, even though you already talked about London. We could talk a little bit about it. So this
I can't believe you picked that quote out because that's crazy. But anyway, cool.
I love it. Yeah, this is a quote. Okay, so it goes. Courier girls, watch out. These cookies have a crunch. They don't take any shit. It's wise to know where one should stand or sit at the feet of a female courier, especially in the summer. So I just thought, okay, these girls are warriors. Do not get next to me, right? Because they'll take their U-lock out and they hit you over the head, right? Yeah. But tell me about the women couriers in London. Because in New York, I don't know. I mean, the women couriers in New York, they're tough. But this seemed a little like straightforward. Don't mess with us, kind of like. So explain that.
I would say that I don't know. Like, there's some tough cookies here, man.
No, there are.
And that wasn't necessarily like specific to London. I would probably say that was specific to not all the cities, Berlin as well. But yeah, London, because I spent most of the time photographing in London because it's where I was living. They were pretty fucking hardcore. They were pretty hardcore people. It's like, and even though that they were women, they were street, and they were tough. So the quote wasn't so much about like people that knew them. It was more about like if you're gonna mess with them, be careful.
Okay, all right, that's cool. So, I'm going to go to Berlin next, which is another city, which is Germany. And there's a quote on 156 that I thought was good too. All right, it's funny because if you're a courier, you kind of understand like routing and where they're sending you. Yeah. So it goes, and I'm going to say the quote and then you can kind of talk about Berlin. How far around the corner? The usual response when collecting and delivering packages in Berlin. Yeah, well, around the corner is a relative term in Berlin. It's not unusual to ride 5 kilometers to do a job that was around the corner. So that's I found out quite interesting that they would tell the courier it's around the corner, and the job is 2 miles away, right? Literally, so it's kind of funny how they're using relative terms in terms of dispatching in Berlin. But what's the Berlin?
That was kind of unique for Berlin because that wasn't something that I created. That was something that was told to me because I asked someone to give me a quote, and they wrote that. But it was more expansive than that. It was also about basically Germany is like quite unique because he will know that they're very. It's a very methodical process. So basically, what it was about was when you go to pick up packages from like a German company. The person that's giving you the package has pretty much no idea where it's going. It has an address on there, and that's their job is just to give it to you. They have no idea of where it's going. Where is it going? They probably don't even know where it's going in Berlin. And the actual quote was more expansive. It was like they don't even put the address on there. They just put the name and the company. And his quote was very funny. My friend Cole in Berlin, he said like, it surprises me and it always like makes me wonder why like Germans are always disappointed at Christmas because when they send letters to Father Christmas, they don't get any presents. It's because they're not addressing them to fucking Lapland. Pretty much what he was saying. So like they would pick up packages in Berlin and it didn't have a full address. So how can you send someone to somewhere in a big city and it doesn't have an address? So they would always have to ask where it was. And it would be just around the corner. But around the corner could be like 5 kilometers away.
That sounds
so that was nothing to do with me. That was like someone who I asked about like their experience of picking up packages in Berlin.
So what was it like following couriers in Berlin? Did you know German or you spoke English?
You can get by like with English. Like most of the couriers spoke pretty good English. My German is. I know all the swear words basically. That's as good as it gets.
Okay. But you was able to get around.
Yeah, you can get around.
Get around. Okay. So how receptive was Berlin to your ideal of doing a photographing versus New York? Because now you went to New York, you had some difficulty getting couriers, but you did get them eventually. Now you're in Berlin.
Like in New York, it wasn't so much about like people not being like interested. It was just like everyone was on the fly.
Okay.
So I was saying to people like, right, okay, where's the best place to like catch these guys? And they were like, and so like I was given multiple addresses like 1061 6th Avenue. Like you should go there because that's where everyone goes. It's like it's a regular pickup point. So I went up there and I put up my backdrop, and a couple of people put something out on Instagram. Was kind of like it was early in its days, but it wasn't like it was now. And so a few things got put out, and they knew where to find me. And I had my backdrop on the scaffolding on the street. And I remember that on that particular time it was cold. It was cold. I didn't want to be there. It was fucking cold. And I stayed there all day. And like people would come through, and I would like have the backdrop, and I would get them to like do portraits and stuff. And pretty much the same in Berlin. I went to Berlin pretty much a month later. So I flew back to London, and then I jumped straight on a plane, went straight to Berlin in the freezing cold. But I managed to figure out a place like a bike shop where I could put up my backdrop inside, and it was warmer, and people came through, and yeah, everyone was receptive to the idea. Everyone was like, "Wow, this is really cool." So, yeah.
Oh, okay. So you went to a bike shop in Berlin versus maybe a messenger center or a messenger center, because a lot of messengers hang out at messenger centers. So it's easy.
Yeah. Like Berlin in that sense was different to New York because like you knew that everyone would like kind of like congregate or go to this particular place, whereas in New York people would be like on the fly, like I said, like you never knew where you're going to catch them.
Right.
Until I figured out everyone was going to 2 bars, and that's where I went.
East River?
East River and Second Chance.
Second Chance, okay. Then you find a lot of couriers. Okay, great. And so, so let's talk about Tokyo. I mean, I was in Tokyo a couple of years ago. I had escorts. I didn't have to read the signs, so I mean, I wasn't lost because I had escorts. But how did you get around in Tokyo?
Tokyo is a really, really cool place. First of all,
Okay.
people are very cool. In terms of streets, I kind of like within like a week, I kind of like knew my way around. But if there was something happening and it was a place I didn't know, that was it, man.
That was it?
Yeah, I couldn't figure it out, man. It was, and Tokyo's huge.
It's huge, sure.
It's big.
Yeah, it's big, like New York City.
But luckily, you know, like, and this is the thing, is like everywhere, and like at this point, I realised, okay, you know, like if I'm going somewhere, I'm gonna like give advance notice. It's like, okay, does someone know someone in Tokyo who can, like, you know, like, and this is the thing about the bike messenger community is like everywhere I went, like, well, London I didn't need to, but in New York and in Berlin and in Tokyo, there was always someone who would accommodate me and like just basically show me around and like introduce me to people. Without that, I would have been like clutching at straws. I'd be like, well, where do I find these people?
Yeah.
You know?
I totally understand.
So,
yeah.
you know, so I learned, and it's like anything, you know, it's like a learning process. You learn how to adapt to the way that these people live. In a sense, it's like, right, okay, where's the best place to photograph everyone together in a particular place? And I learned there was a bike shop in Tokyo where everyone would go on Friday and they would drink beer and play cards, and that was it. So I just went, right, okay, I'm going to go there, I'm going to put my backdrop up, and then like 100 like bike messages in Tokyo came through. Kind of made it easy for me.
Wow. That's good.
That's it. You know.
That's good.
So that was it.
Yeah, because the Japanese community a little more, although they may have disagreements, they're a little more closer.
Yeah.
Than like, because New York, everybody has attitude.
Yeah. And through that, I was able to say to a few people, look, you know, like, can I hang out with you and ride with you and like basically spend the whole day or half a day with you taking pictures? Yeah. And they're like timekeepers, man. It's not like New York. It's like meeting him at like 2 o'clock. It's like 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
I'm only kidding.
Yeah. So.
You know, but they were really like, you know, like if they say like 9 o'clock, they would be there at 9 o'clock. So you could, like, you know, you could hook up with them and like ride with them.
Right. So as you're going through these cities and you're looking at these faces, what are you visualizing? What do you see in this bike messenger story? See a lot of cats kind of doing the same job, and the language is kind of almost the same, right? The lingo, right? Everybody's kind of like talking almost the same thing.
Like,
so how do you see?
You know that in every city that I shot the street pictures in, London, New York, Tokyo, and Berlin, I didn't have like an idea, like, you know, I wasn't thinking about so much what they were doing. I was just purely visually looking for something attractive.
Okay.
So I was always trying to make pictures that were attractive.
Okay.
I wasn't trying to deviate from, like, you know, like, and every city that I went in, like, people would say, Mark, do you want to come in and like, you know, like photograph me when I'm collecting the packages? Maybe I should have done that, but I just decided I didn't want to do that. That was something that I didn't want to do because I didn't want to like impact on what they were doing in terms of like, I was purely interested in just the way that they rode in the streets, and I try to capture that photographically. So I wasn't like particularly like thinking in any city, you know, like, oh, I want to capture this, I want to capture that. I was just like, just making pictures and just seeing how it worked. But through that, I was always looking to see, you know, is this unique to New York? Is this unique to London? Is this unique to because the publisher said, I want to see more. And I sent him, funny enough, actually, I sent him like more pictures, and he wrote back to me. He said, I want to see more. I'm like, what more do you want to see? So I just made more and more pictures, and I ended up with so many pictures. It made the book really, really difficult to edit because there were so many pictures that I wanted to use that I couldn't. And incidentally, they never published the book because once it got to the pandemic, they were like, oh, we can't publish it until 2022. I'm like, oh, right, I'm just going to do it myself.
Right.
Yeah.
So, did you yourself see any difference from the different cities? Or do you look at the
Of course, you know, like every city's different, you know, like in terms of like, you know, like the landscape, the architecture. So yeah, I incorporated that in the images, and so if you look at Tokyo, you know it's Tokyo, like the streets. You know it's New York.
Okay.
You know it's, well, you might, if you've never been to London, you might know it's London, but it's London.
Right.
Berlin, you know it's Berlin. So I tried to incorporate that. I mean, Tokyo is a bit of a no-brainer because like,
you can see the
you
signs.
can see the signs. Whereas like London, it could be.
I mean, I found like some of the streets, like Berlin and London, they're older buildings, right? So some of the buildings, you know, they're not necessarily modern, so I can kind of see the little difference there. But like I said, as we talked earlier, Korean culture, and it's almost you can swap pictures from different cities, and they can look like they're from that city. So that totally makes sense. Now the next chapter you go in is into style, and the style part was interesting. I mean, I'm a street photographer, so my styling is I concentrate on doing stories on messenger bags and the craft of making messenger bags. And my next story is on cycling caps, and I kind of focus on that style. But I see yours was a little more, I would say, eclectic. It's not a particular way you did it, not a concentrated spot, but because I did see some pictures of, you know, beat up messenger bags, right, you know, and stuff
and
that.
They were the ones that I photographed right at the beginning when I had the idea, the concept to do it as a purely stylistic book. Portraits of bags, bikes, tattoos, anything that I thought was stylish, like courier, like bike messenger style. That was the idea, the original concept of the book. So that was, you know, like the street stuff was something that I added afterwards because I thought it was gonna get published. So they were like, we want to see more street, exactly, more street. So it morphed into that. I don't know whether or not I should have like stayed with the original concept. Whether the book would have been better or worse without the street stuff. I don't know.
But in terms of the style part, do you think the couriers were coming with the punk culture already, but they were just riding bikes? So it's not like they
do you mean that they dressed up specifically?
Yeah. So
no one like if I said to them like, oh, I want to do like some pictures. I never said to them, oh, I'm interested in like your style. So like, can you wear something more stylish?
No, that's not what I mean.
Right,
I mean, couriers are eclectic in their style.
Yeah.
So you may have some that's coming from punk, you may have some coming from hip hop, or you may have some who are just not styling. They're just doing their job. Right? So I'm saying these cats are coming already from punk culture, but they're riding bikes.
Yeah.
So their job that's pretty much.
And it's also reflective in their bikes as well, because their bike is also like an extension of their style. Because you can have someone who wants to keep their bike nice and clean, and then other people don't really care. Mechanically, it's sound because you know, like you've got to look after your bike. Except he doesn't look after his bike. I can tell you that for a fact because he would always be over at my garage, Mark, clean my bike up, fix my bike. But anyway, that's another story. But like generally, like the bikes would be like, the bikes would look gnarly, and they would have stickers and they would be scratched and stuff, but mechanically they would sound. Whereas other people would like really like take care of their bikes. But if you're riding your bike for, like every day for 8 hours, it's impossible to keep it mechanically sound all the time. Which is why I suppose weekends are like for like chilling out. It's also for a bike message to clean your bike, right?
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
But,
right. You know, and I see you shot a lot of bikes. You shot the stickers, stuff like that.
So that was part of the style. It's like everyone had their own style, and I was really attracted to the way that like the bike was an extension of themselves.
Right. Absolutely.
Because they're with their bike all the time.
That's right.
You know?
That's right.
So.
That's right. No, and obviously they work on the street, so they're not going to wear suits and ties, right? They're going to be in kind of grungy clothes, jeans, stuff that's going to get.
Having said that, I did see someone in London actually turn up, and they were going to a wedding, and they were on their bike, and I was like, really?
But I mean, that's
anyway, I should have photographed it.
But
anyway.
that's unusual. Most of these cats are in the grudgy.
You would have thought,
clothes.
like, you know, like put your bike away. It's a special day. It wasn't his wedding, but he was going to his friend's wedding, and he turned up in a suit. But he was with cycling shoes, and he's on his bike. Legend. Anyway.
Okay. All right. So no, the style part of it is pretty cool, and you captured some really unique moments, and you know, I don't see too many smiles throughout these photos.
He's smiling, but
he's got a little smirk on his face. I mean, he's got a little smirk on his face. But so you got the style section, and then you end up in the alley cat. So how did you see? I know what alley cat is. You tell us what alley cat is, and so that maybe someone who's listening to this may not know. But you have a alley cat section, and what was that?
You know what an alley cat is? An alley cat is basically an illegal street race, and you see alley cats that are being set up by non-bike messengers and couriers all around the world now, because it's a subcultural thing. But essentially, you know that alley cats were organised originally by bike messengers and couriers. I think maybe, I'm not sure if New York was the first place to have an alley cat. I believe Toronto was the first place. And because I was hanging out with these guys in London especially, there was two characters, and they would like throw alley cats every other Friday. And I got into it, and I liked the buzz, man. I was like, yeah, I'm down. I'll ride. Even though like a lot of these guys were like on their bikes all day, every day. I suppose I had an advantage at some point, sometimes, because I was fresh. It's like I just rode my bike, you know, from West London to East London to my studio, and I was like, you know, although I was on my feet all day, you know, I wasn't riding around all day, so I would like turn up on a Friday and race. So
you fresh, and they worked all day, all week, and now.
I did. I think I did about 7 or 8 alley cats in London.
Yeah, how
and then I realised I enjoyed doing the checkpoints more.
I hate with the checkpoints. Okay.
So I don't know if anyone that is doing what checkpoint is like. There's different types of alley cats, but a checkpoint is where each rider has to go through and get a piece of paper signed by the person that's standing at the checkpoint. So yeah, checkpoints. But I did quite a few alley cats in London. I did some in Berlin. I did the Halloween alley cat in 2016 in New York.
You did? Oh, you did how? Because they have a big one in Berlin.
Yeah, the Halloween alley cat is the oldest one, I believe. It's like 25 years.
Yeah, it's big.
I've done that a couple of times.
You've done it? Okay.
Yeah, I've done that. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
There are pictures of guys from there?
Yeah, there's some pictures in the alley cat section of like from Berlin.
Halloween Berlin.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I know it's a big.
But essentially, I try to capture. I didn't take pictures of myself riding an alley cat, but I was basically entering an alley cat and like taking pictures of other people participating in an alley cat in London.
Well, checkpoints are good for photographing because everybody's coming in,
Yeah,
right?
that's it.
So
Yeah,
you
that's
just
it.
want to get a
Yeah.
shot just standing there.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So it's a beautiful day to photograph like alley cats and things. So that's kind of like a fun section. So now I see a lot of quotes from Lucas. I know Lucas.
Well, there's two quotes from Lucas.
What? Well, because you also have them on the sleeve as well.
The
You have one
introduction,
here,
yes, from
and
Lucas.
yeah, so it's like more than a couple of spots. But what? You're taking Lucas' quote. Did you ask him to write something? Or he just did it on his own?
I met Lucas in New York in 2016. I kind of like showed him a preliminary idea of the book, and he was like, straight away, he was like, this is cool, really, really cool project. And so then I reached out to him and was like, would you like to write something for the book? He was like, yeah, definitely. And that's how
You
it
got
was.
it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, yeah. His quotes are good. I
So
like it.
yeah, he wrote the foreword about like his work as a filmmaker, making the iconic line of sight. Which,
Yeah.
if you haven't seen it, I recommend you watch
I've seen
it.
it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then he wrote this about alley cats, which is pretty much how it goes, right? I mean, you could be the fastest rider on a time trial, but can you ride that speed like going through London and New York City in an alley cat, skipping through
No
traffic?
way. No way. There's
So
no way.
it's unique. It's a unique concept. It's a unique way of riding a bike. And to anyone out there who thinks it's easy, it's not. It's fucking dangerous.
So
Yeah.
it's good that you mentioned that because I want to kind of end my part and then get into questions and answers if there are some. I know the courier work is dangerous and people die doing it. So, I mean, I didn't see much of a storyline about the danger part in here. Is there a reason why you? I know you're showing a culture, but there's a dark side in this world as well.
Yes, definitely. Just making this book, I know. Well, there's four people.
There's four
There's
people
four
here
people that
in the back.
I've attributed
Right.
as in
And
memorial.
remembrance, yeah.
But yeah, and since then, there's been other people that have also lost their lives. But that's not riding alley cats. That's just riding.
They're riding your
the
bike.
streets.
Yeah. But I'm just talking about the whole courier world in general.
Yeah,
Just being a courier is
yeah.
dangerous, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you're on a bike all day in any big city, your chances of getting knocked off by a car is much higher than if you just take a city bike and ride from here up to wherever you're going to go.
Mm-hmm.
You can still get knocked off. It's kind of weird, right? Because you could just take a city bike and you might not be a very good cyclist, and so if you don't know how to ride on the street, you're gonna get knocked off your bike if you can't ride a bike. Whereas like these guys, like their chances of getting knocked off their bike is tenfold higher because they're spending all their time on the bike. And it's just tragic. I mean, obviously, I could fill 50 of these pages of people that have been killed on their bikes in any of these cities I've worked in, or photographed in. But obviously, I've concentrated on these people. And there's been other people that have died since. It's just tragic.
That's right.
So.
It's.
I don't know what to say about that. Anyone here who rides a bike in New York or any other city, it's like
we don't talk about
take
it that
care,
much.
man,
We don't talk about it that much, but it happens, and I think at least when I try to present my stories, that there's a dark side in this world that that's a part of it. So I like people just to know that it's.
But I think
people
I think your
hurt.
chances of like in New York or any of these big cities like London, your chances of getting knocked off your bike as a courier are much higher because you're more likely to. I don't know how to say this, but you're more likely to bend the rules, jump lights, and that comes with its own consequences. So like if you do that, because you do that because you need to make money. So you either don't make money and you abide by the rules and you're going to go anywhere, or you take your chance and but then you could just be riding home steady and just abiding by the rules, and then some idiot runs a car runs the lights and just plows through you and kills you.
That's
so
true.
it's there's a balance in that. It's life, I suppose. It's like you take your chances, right?
Yeah, it's good. But overall, I mean, it's an exciting book, and you call all the couriers like a tribe, which is cool. Because all the different sides of it, and everybody's like, they're not on the same page, but they're part of the same culture, which is cool. So I enjoyed the book and congratulate you on making it happen. So I'll open it up. Any questions out there for Mark?
No, not really.
Why not?
I have a question for Mark.
What's that?
I really enjoyed the series of rat photography that you did, the dead rats on the street.
The which one, sorry?
You were shooting the dead rats on the street.
Yeah. That's got nothing to do with the bite messages. But anyway, yeah, I did some pictures of street kill. I was shooting dead rats and stuff.
I was wondering the lighting and flash setting, because I understand you were probably shooting directly at the ground. I was actually curious as to what, if you remember the lighting and flash setting.
Yeah, just on my iPhone.
Shut those in your iPhone.
Yeah, I went for a strange period where I was just shooting street kill. He saw some of the pictures.
Oh, he saw some.
I have questions for Kurt as well.
Go ahead, Mr. Nick. It's good.
It sounds fucked up, but I kind of miss the old plywood days in Soho. This was only you knew it was never going to happen again, and then it happened again.
Right.
And I didn't, but it seems that anybody that really wanted a better future would, of course, be like, you can't plywood, man. This is not exactly a great time. The reason that brought upon the damn plywood aren't, and you can debate whether it was better that we had the plywood. You know what I mean? Maybe if Floyd hadn't been killed by the cop, we would, we wouldn't be, having the civil rights progress that we're having right now. But from a stone walk around New Yorker standpoint, a lot of plywood. And I wondered if you had maybe similar mixed feelings that I did, or if you had, or what your feelings were at all walking by and not seeing the plywood that intrigued all of us. Even I had my sunny afternoon where I went down there and I was like,
well, I attribute some of my street photography to my access as a messenger, right? So because I know the streets so well, I can do things that maybe the other person may not be able to do just because I know the streets. It's not bragging, but that was my job, right? So when I saw,
were you still working while the plywood was happening?
Sorry. But you're talking about the images that he shot, after the legacy of the Floyd. Interesting work, man. And I was going to take you afterwards, but I might have to do it.
Yeah, but
it's a really interesting work because you capture something that is ephemeral and you needed to be captured because it was a period in, I think, in every society where enough is enough.
No, the rage was pretty big and unique. And for me, as a courier, just walking something like 2 square miles of art, right? And it's from the art, and people don't realize it, the art was from Bowery to Houston, Bowery to West Broadway, and Houston to Canal. So it's almost 2 mile square radius of retail stores that get hit by street artists. Unheard of, right? And these stores are upscale retailers. So it's really, the people came out and they wanted to be heard, and they made it heard by getting in their face, right? The plywood, the art on the plywood was in their face. Plus they looted the stores. So there's a lot of tension there. And so me as an African American is like saying, damn, okay, this is real. People are tired. And what's interesting about my documentation that most of the artists who painted on the plywood weren't black. 85% of the people in that book are not black. Hispanic, Japanese, white, all these multicultural elements. So so it was quite inspiring. Thanks for the question. But I attribute a lot of my work to the lifestyle of couriers and what I learned from being a courier and what being a courier gives me access to, right? Being on the street just gives me a lot of access. Most people don't see it, you know, and so it's a unique thing. So it's special kind of being a courier and then applying that to something good, right? And that's what I'm trying to do. So thanks. Any more questions from Mark?
Yeah.
So, just with your experience of, being involved with the courier community, but, have not working in the courier thing, getting kind of involved both as an artist and then kind of been down and stuff like that. I was wondering if there was anything that you personally learned from couriers, anything that kind of surprised you moving forward, is there anything as far as your outlook on life, stuff like that, that kind of...
A lot. First things, I got a rack on my bike. Best thing ever, man. Trust me. It's like I got a bike, and it's like as soon as I saw everyone with racks on the front of their bike, I was like, such a good idea. Because everyone should get a rack on their bike. Because if you've got a bag on your back and it's hot like it was today, if you got your bag on the rack, your back's dry. Except for today, it rains. My back was wet anyway, so it wouldn't have mattered. But you don't want to be carrying heavy weights on your back. You put it on the bike. Let the bike do the work. That's one of the best things I've learned from Koreans. Yeah.
Is there anything more just about, just life and your outlook on anything?
Like I said, like when Kurt was asking me, it reinvigorated my love of bikes. I always loved bikes, but hanging around with people that were riding bikes all the time reinvigorated my love of bikes. And I got, how many bikes have I got now? I had one, now I've got 6. So, yeah, and so there are bikes that, you look at your bike and I know Nick's only got one bike, I don't even see him still ride it anymore, but Nick only had one bike, but I've got 6. And it's like, you look at your bike and you go, yeah, I'm going to ride that one today. No, I'll ride that one. Whatever, so they reinvigorate my love of bikes. That, for me, that was the most beautiful thing. There's another personal aspect to this book that I'm not going to talk about, but anyway, something happened and it was beautiful. So the book, it's been a long time in the making because I've had a lot of letdowns and publishers saying they want to do the book, but I didn't think it was possible to sell the book because it was such a esoteric subculture. So that's why I kind of put the style into the book to make it more appealing to people that are into bikes.
So you're extending it more than just the message, the message culture itself.
Yeah, because you know what messages is like. Not everyone's going to buy the book, and it's so I was trying to make it more appealing to regular cyclists who enjoy cycling and enjoy bikes, but might not necessarily know about this particular culture. And so hopefully by looking through the book it might inspire them to cycle, and that's a good thing, right? So if you can inspire someone to get on a bike, top banana.
Yeah. When you say the photographs weren't fine art, even though you're trying to get the best image, it's not a fine art photograph. So explain the logic there, why you think you're not going for fine art, even though you're trying to paint a portrait of that courier that looks really, really good.
The images that the portraits that I shot on a black backdrop, I photographed those exactly the same way as if I would photograph someone in the studio. There was I didn't have this concept where I'm not going to bother whether I capture something good or not. No, because as a photographer, you don't work like that. You just want to get the best picture every time. It doesn't always happen, but you're always trying to get a great picture. And sometimes it doesn't work, and you think, right, okay. And you look at the pictures, and you sometimes you have to come back to the person and say, can we shoot something again because it didn't really work? Can we try something different? And that's just about creativity. So yeah, in terms of fine art, yeah, I'll always. I mean, I don't know what the difference with like you know what you would consider fine art, photography, or fashion, or documentary. This book is more like it's a combination of like portraits. So I was trying to what I was trying to do in the portraits, especially, was trying to capture people's personality, and that's what you want to see. Like when you look at a portrait, you want to see the personality of the person, because if you don't see any joie de vivre, if you don't see any life in the person, then there's what's the point of having a picture? That's kind of like the way that I see it. So.
Yeah, I mean, like here, you're showing some shadow here, right? So in some worlds, a fine art photograph can be a shadow, right? And you got like blurry shots in here. So obviously you're working with technique. It's not a straight portrait of everybody with a backdrop. You're actually trying to create different scenes.
Yeah, I'm just trying to I'm just making pictures, and so like if I would follow someone around, particularly on a bike, I would try different things. Like I would ride with them and like swipe the camera to try and like create a blurred effect. It didn't always work. Sometimes it worked. It worked better at night time than in the daytime because the lights would like blur. Yeah, it's just as a photographer, as a creative person, just try new things all the time. So,
Okay, all right. So really going
there
out.
was no premeditated
No
idea
premeditation.
of like like how I'm going to make.
How do you want to shoot? How do you want to
pictures.
make the picture? Okay, so you actually what you see is what you want to do, right?
Yeah.
So you're not creating a scene. Except the portraits you did set up for the backdrop, whereas the street scenes were more you was out there.
Yeah, I set the backdrop up because I just wanted it uniform and clean all the way through the book. I didn't want to capture. I mean, I could have captured like portraits
On
the street.
Yeah.
But I wanted to break up the street and like the portraits and the bike pictures. I wanted it to have something that was eye-catching and like, oh, this is a little bit different. Like to see it in a different way. So.
Okay. All right.
Maybe I did that. I
mean, I myself, I like to street portraits very much more than having like a backdrop. I think the message of the story is a street story.
Right.
So shooting them in their element to me is like the best way to go.
Yeah.
But still the book is exciting. Any more questions out there? Right.
Is the next one going to be lollipops?
There's lollipops there. I love that.
Oh wow. That's cool.
I see the lollipops already. Like Tax got a lollipop.
Yeah. Oh, he took one. That's cool.
Yeah.
Lollipops are popular in here. Wow, that's cool. All right.
Can't believe that.
So there's there you go. Tak has a question.
Yes.
Yes. Tokyo series, really amazing.
Thank you.
How long did you stay in Tokyo? And who is your I don't want to say coordinator, like a dispatcher, like a connection?
Yeah. I was saying to Kurt, I spent how long was I in Tokyo? I was in Tokyo for 3 weeks.
Just 3 weeks?
Just 3 weeks. And I managed to get a connection with I stayed with one guy in Tokyo and he introduced me to lots of different people.
Which guy?
Shoot, mate. What's his name? JP.
JP.
Yeah. Oh, you know JP. Right. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So this page, perfect.
Oh, so you know these people?
I know him so well.
This is the boss. Yeah, this is the boss man.
It's
Yeah.
really hard to take photograph.
Yeah, he didn't want to take pictures, and then he went and changed, and he came back, and he made his hair good. And so I got him like this.
We
Yeah,
respect you.
yeah.
No, this is
So, but I like Tokyo. Tokyo is very cool.
So JP was your
Oh, you can show the photos. Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. This guy, yeah.
he's
He's the boss.
Oh, he's what? Okay.
He's the boss.
Yeah, he's one of the oldest OG.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
I kind of knew that, and I should have made the picture bigger. I could have like swapped it around with this, but someone designed this for me, and I thought it was really cool. So yeah, but Tokyo's a really cool city, man. And what I really like about Tokyo, and I don't know if anyone knows this, but I would go to meet people at a bar, and I would chain my bike up with the D-lock, and they were like, "Mark, what are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm chaining my bike up." And they were like, "You don't need to chain your bike up." Japanese culture is like crazy. It's like no one would take your bike. You could leave it on the street all night, every night, leave it unlocked, no one would touch it.
And they're so used to radios.
Shit.
They're so used to
If you did that in New York, turn your back, gone. You know, and it's kind of like, I'm not saying, I'm not disparaging like, you know, like American society, but it was really like, but I was still locking my bike, and I'm like, "Mark, relax." I'm like, "Yeah, but like, you know, like in London, it's like, you know, if you leave your bike unlocked, someone's going to steal it. It's like, no one's going to steal your bike." Crazy. And it's a unique place. I had a great time, and actually when I went to Tokyo, it was I landed in Tokyo, and it was the coldest time in Tokyo for like 50 years. It was minus 48 degrees. That's cold. But within a day, they cleared the streets, and you could ride on them again. Crazy time. It was cold, but I got warmth from the people, so you know that was good. Yeah.
Anybody else?
I can't believe I'm sucking a lot.
Okay, it's a wrap, guys. Thanks so much for coming out.
Thank you very much.